As part of the fiscal 22 defense budget, Congress will review how the Pentagon requests and receives its annual funding. The review group is called the Commission on Planning, Programming, Budgeting, and Execution Reform. Ron Marks is a former CIA official and former intelligence advisor to two Senate Majority Leaders. Ron, welcome to the program.
Delighted to be here. Thank you, Mimi.
Nice to see you. So the current budgeting process it was created by Defense Secretary Robert McNamara in 1961. How could we possibly be using something that old?
You know, every once in a while you look at these things and they get so caught in the system, and they're such a part of a system that everybody gets used to. I've been teaching this system, believe it or not, on and off for about 15 years, where I come in and try to explain it all. And it wasn't illogical from that 1950s and 60s approach. It's systems analysis, which is a $10 term for sort of picking this thing apart and trying to look at each level and how it affects each other. The problem is that the bureaucracy is sort of layered into each one of these things. So you go from a national security strategy from the president. You have a national defense strategy based on that, which is, you know, how we're going to arrange the Pentagon stuff to support the president. And then you go in from that planning level to the programming level in the budget, which is, you know, what programs are we going to do that are going to support this? Plan for the defense, which supports the president. And by the way, how are we going to get the money for this thing? So that's the good news, but even that takes a couple of years, and then you go up to the Congress, because the President's State of the Union is essentially the budget. He's going up there and saying, look, this is what I want. And they don't have to take it. They can look at it, the Congress, and just say, I can remember one point in time, as Speaker of the House basically said, this is dead on arrival.
You know, what's the thinking behind making it such a long and arduous process?
Well, it's big. I mean, it's huge when it's all said and done. And, I mean, in the McNamara days, I think the budget was about 8% of GDP. Right now, it's I think 3.7%. It's $760 billion. I mean, it's the size of a country in terms of its overall, you know, the overall absolute numbers. And in terms of companies in the U.S., I think only Amazon and Walmart come close at about $600 billion. So it's huge stuff. So it's not illogical for them to want to ask the questions and, you know, sort of balance off resources and see again what supports and doesn't support. The problem is it's just so bloody long. So by the time you make a decision in year, say 2 years ago, you write it up this year, you send it up to the Hill, and you may not spend it until next year. And as you know, with the CR we've got right now, that spending will get pushed now into, well, we're into 23.
Well, you know, I won't ask you to comment on China's defense budgeting process, but I'm going to guess it's not that long and not that complicated.
They have their own headaches with it because they've got a lot more state-owned companies involved with it. But yeah, it goes a lot faster. You know, it's the old story. I mean, we are supposedly with a democracy, not supposedly, with a democracy. It's supposed to be a little slower. We have to think about it. This is the people's money we're spending. When you have a centralized government, by and large, the decisions tend to get made a little more quickly. They have their 5-year plans as well, but certainly in terms of acquisition, certainly in terms of pushing the money through when they need it, you know, much more quickly than we can.
So what's this reform committee going to be looking for? What are they trying to do?
Well, I think we're going to take a fairly careful look at the whole process itself, from the planning stage through the programming and budgeting, execution to some extent, but they really need to take a look at sort of who's layered into this thing. You've got a lot of different layers. You know, there's some poor guy like me who is sitting down the front lines who think that doing their job is the right thing to do, and they don't realize that half that job is trying to figure out where their budget's going to come from for the next couple of years. So you've got that layer, you've got the layer above them, there's another layer, say for instance it goes from, you know, some poor guy at some naval air station somewhere, up through the Navy, up through the Pentagon, up to Office of Management and Budget, then over to the Hill. Armed Services reviews it, the Appropriations Committees, by the way, who actually have the money, review it, they come up with something, and then you turn around at the end and it goes back to the Management and Budget, and you end up with my favorite game for the Price is Right, Plinko, which is that the butter sort of eventually come down to you through that system, and then you spend it. But you're also a couple of years down the road from the initial request. You're involved with trying to balance off when the monies are going to come in. And you're dealing with contractors, by the way, who are also sitting there waiting. In the middle of the CR right now, there's no new spending. So if I'm a contractor and I've got a contract coming, what do? Do I hang on to the people? Do I wait for these guys to get through? How do I balance off my resources? So it's a bit of a tangled mess, and what they're trying to do is take a look at how this process works. And by the way, the ignorance of this process, and I don't mean people are stupid. I mean, they just don't know about this process until they get involved with it is profound. So trying to get people educated, trying to get them to understand, try to get an acquisition process through this all as well. That's what they need to review. They're not going to be able to touch the Hill. The Hill, God love them, have their own system, and they never listen to anybody. They've got our authorization appropriations committees, and that's not going away. So it's the internal process of the Pentagon, I think, that they need to focus on.
Well, we'll see what happens, and we'll see when the continuing resolution finally gets resolved. Thank you, Ron.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.